Welcome to the InCred podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the InCred podcast, a bi weekly series where we discuss interesting topics with incredible talent. It is true that we don't just browse online, but we live online. And this is especially true in these trying times when our movement is so restricted. So, in today's pilot episode, we will talk about the changing landscape of marketing in this pandemic world and why the future of marketing is digital. Our speaker today is a veteran in the marketing and branding space with over 2 decades of experience under his belt. He is currently the joint CEO of Mirim, a leading digital global agency. He also co founded an e commerce venture called Home India. He is also the co author of the book, If I Had to Do It Again. So please welcome Mr. Sanjay Mehta. Okay, hi Sanjay. Welcome to the InCred podcast. So my first question to you is, how would you compare traditional marketing to digital marketing?
Okay. So, at the outset, these terms, traditional, especially putting into inverted commas and all, are somewhat dated now. I think marketing as a whole is becoming an integrated piece. Having said that, from a point of view from where you are coming as a question, and perhaps for the benefit of the listeners, I would look at traditional marketing as typically stuff that was happening in around the print and television and outdoor and cinema, radio. These have been around for like several years and would be considered as otherwise as traditional marketing means. And digital and its various sort of subcuts or sub cultures around digital, relatively speaking, kind of a newer age marketing, just to contrast it from traditional to digital. That's how this fundamental definition has been. But in a very different sense, if you look at it, the earliest way in which marketing happened, and you can go back, maybe 100 years ago or whenever, was when, somebody had something to sell and they told their neighbor, and, the neighbors told their neighbor and all that. So word of mouth, in a sense, was how marketing kind of fundamentally began. And then as it spread, somebody, wrote out on a piece of paper and put it on front of their door. And that's how, let's say, a hoarding happened, or, some kind of print work happened. And then they would have been. So, it's evolved from going to one word to the other, to becoming a little bit of a broadcast medium where you just shout on top of the hill and, take a megaphone and say, here's a new thing which we have to offer. And then we are zeroing down to becoming more and more focused in terms of who we want to reach, a very, very specific, very targeted audience. And that is typically through means like digital marketing and, even more specifically in terms of, programmatic marketing and things like that, where you're literally aiming to reach an audience of one, in the sense of very, very focused, that these are the kind of uh, parameters I'm looking for, and who is the very specific audience who is relevant for me for this, and reaching that. So, one is the medium per se, and the other is the approach itself. That one is to shout and, go for a carpet bombing. Other is to be reaching limited number of people but highly relevant audience, is another way of looking at the comparison between traditional and digital.
Right. I think that's so true that digital allow you to do a very targeted approach. So how can a brand indulge in content personalization? Because there is so much content out there, right? So how can one sort of break that clutter in the digital space and personalize their content or their approach for their user?
So first of all, I think everybody as a listener and everybody who can think of themselves first as a consumer and not as a brand will appreciate that as a consumer, all of us unfortunately get hit by way too much content, way too much communication from brands. and it's
That's true.
literally an overdose and overload of sorts. And we're kind of getting fed up of that at one level. On the other hand, when we are really looking for something, or we are in a, like say, all of us are in a kind of a lockdown modes, working from home. So we are looking, for example, in terms of efficient ways to clean our homes and do our, vessels and whatever. I mean, for example, you're looking for tool, you're looking for appliances. So you would welcome a relevant message on the as much as you loathe irrelevant carpet bombed messages to you which you don't want. So the reality is that it's not that the audience is not looking to get messaging from brands. They're looking for it as long as it's relevant for them. So to begin with, establish the fact that there is a need for communication by the audience, and just that they want it as relevant as possible. Now, that's part one. Part two is that everyone is an individual. So, while earlier, you would cut your communication basis. Okay, I'm going to put my ad in Times of India, which goes to an urban audience, etc., etc. So you are making a cut at that very broad base of everybody who's a Times of India reader in Mumbai can get it. But people reading Times of India in Mumbai are several different types of people. They are not the same. They don't have the same mindset. They are not the same, buying power. They are not the same age. They are not the same gender. They don't live exactly the same kind of lifestyle. Their requirements are different. So when you think in terms of audience, you have to think in terms of the sharper the better. So if you can get the absolute right message to the right audience, that's where you succeed. Now, is that possible? When it was mass media, when it was television, when it was print, when it was a hoarding on a street, there is no way to kind of seriously customize the hoarding for individuals. It's not so easy to customize a television ad for the individual. But when it gets to digital, that is significantly possible. And so now, how does it happen? So your audience consumes your content, generally speaking, let's say in two different places. One is on platforms that you own yourself. So maybe your website or your mobile app or whatever else. It's your own platform. And other is when your content comes across to them when they are outside your owned platform. Maybe when they are surfing the internet and they come across a banner or some content of yours somewhere else. It is possible to customize at both of these levels, right? So now, generally speaking, and it gets more and more detailed and more technical. So I try to keep it as short and simple, fundamentally. So there is a way to understand your audience. Now, the audience to begin with could have come to your website once, for example. Now they could have left behind some email ID, or they may not have left behind an email ID. Irrespective of that, using something like a DMP or a data management platform, there is a way to kind of what we call drop a cookie on their browser, and basis that, first of all, to understand what did they do on your website, what kind of content did they read, how much time they spent on which part of the content, etc. Now, basis that, you create your audience clusters from all the people who visited your website, and then run, first of all, for outside your website, when they go to other websites and your ads are running, you can aim your communication, whether it's an ad, whether it's a piece of content on some platform, basis who is that, which is that cookie, or which is that person who's coming at that point on that website, the right communication pops up at that instant. Now, for those who are not so much into digital marketing, they may not realize, but when you go to a page, let's say you're on a moneycontrol.com and you're seeing an ad, the ad is instantaneously being shown. It's not something which is married to that page like something on a print. On a newspaper, there's an ad on the first page, quarter page down there. It's married. It's there for the entire sort of print run. But on digital, it's obviously something which comes up at that instant. Now, so in that instant, when the browser recognizes as to who is this user who is coming, based on that DMP data, if your ad has to show up, which is that ad or which is that banner which needs to show up, which is the most relevant one, can be decided. And in the same way, when that user comes back to your website, it's like a returning user, the same thing can be done on your website by doing a dynamic content optimization on your website, so that it's not that everybody comes to the web on your homepage and sees the same page. It's very easy or very doable today to have the page respond differently basis who is coming to the page at that point. In this manner, you are personalizing content either on your own owned assets or also on the larger web outside your website as well. And it's based on essentially knowing who the user is, and which has been done through the cookie setting, typically using platforms, software like data management platforms.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think that is so true. It's more contextual now. You can actually serve very relevant pieces of information, as you rightly mentioned, to a particular target set. So that is so true. But do you think so? That brings us to a question that most marketers sort of have to answer to, right? When we talk to our senior level management, the CXO level people in the organization, they are always concerned about ROI. What are the returns that one is getting? I understand, personalization is important. Giving a whole new experience to the consumer is great, but how do you measure the returns that you would get through these activities?
Sure. So, like again, I would split the ROI discussion at two levels. One is if you're running, for example, you're actually running a digital marketing activity, which is culminating in an e-commerce transaction, in some sort of an online consummation of the journey of the consumer in terms of a closure. So either he's buying something from your e-commerce site, or if he is, placing an order or something like that. In which case, that's your end objective, that how you can convert maximum number of people to customers. In that case, all your marketing spends put together, whether it's running advertising, whether it's running content activations, whether it's running blogger activations, or whatever it is that you're doing, which finally have links to take the consumer forward into his journey, into his buying cycle, one step at a time, till the point where they actually convert into a buyer. Then those transactions are simply measured in terms of how much sale you got. Perhaps if you want to really look in terms of ROI, you have an estimated margin on those products or whatever businesses that you're selling. So if you sold 100 rupee worth and you have 20% margin, then you're making 20 rupees out of that, against which how much spend happened. Did you spend 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees? So if you spend 15 rupees and you got 20 rupees worth of gross margin, basically that's how you kind of measure your ROI, that, so much spent, so much returned. So this is where you are actually having a transaction at the end of the journey. So there is a very clear, closure. On the other hand, you may not be selling online. You may be into B2B business. You may be into some other kind of activities which are not necessarily sold online. Then how do you measure your ROI? So then, for every campaign which you take up, you would have an objective that, okay, here is, I have created this whole video campaign, which is there for my customers to learn more about my product, so that after that they may come back to my showroom and purchase it. So that's your objective. So certain budgets have been done in terms of the content creation. Certain budgets will be put to actually market that video or content. Now, if you say that, okay, this is my budget, normally when I used to try to acquire customers or try to educate customers about my new products in my traditional way, I used to have a budget of so much, and it would reach so many people. Okay, so that was my cost per reach for, let's say, somebody to learn about a new launch or a new product. Now that's my benchmark, and can I do better than that? Now you could have a benchmark from your pre-digital days of traditional ways of how much time, how much money it would cost to get a million people to know about your product, or it could be basis a relative comparison that, okay, in my previous campaign, this is how much it cost. And after all that, at the end of the day, I got my ROI in terms of business. My marketing spend was pegged at so much, and then I could get so much business, it conversions happened, etc. So you know that as long as I spend this much money, and as my subsequent conversion of a prospect to actual customer happens offline, I'm still fine because I'm getting my ROI. So you could peg it to a previous campaign, you could peg it to a traditional benchmark that you might be having of how much it used to cost you in print or in television or something. Or you could peg it to a competition, like, okay, there will be benchmarks out there that for mutual fund industry, it takes so much money to, let's say, get X number of people to consume their content or see a video or something, and you benchmark to that and say, okay, can I do better? So there are established norms of how much money it takes to reach X audience, Y audience, or something. Can I do better? Because there's an established norm, and I'm going to spend that much money because I want my message to go out that much. So ROI will be when I can do it for same or less money, right? So like exactly as I said, again to repeat, if there is a conversion happening right there and it's measurable right to the end, then it's easier to benchmark on that in terms of how much money you made out of the sales you got versus how much you actually put in terms of the whole marketing and promotion cost. Or the other way, if you're not converting online, then you benchmark with traditional means or your previous campaigns or an industry benchmark and see if you're able to do better. And that's becomes a kind of basis for measuring ROI.
Right. Yes, yes. Great. So now my next question to you is something that, even I have been faced with, and I'm sure you, as someone who has so many years of work experience and you run such a successful digital agency yourself, many a times people, it's always debatable whether having a certain number of fans, having a certain number of followers, for some people it is very important, where they spend money and they just want this some million, 2 million, 20 million followers. And then there are some who don't focus on the number, who instead focus on engagement. So in the social space I'm referring to, do you think the number of followers, these metrics really matter? So I think the point is that what is your objective? Okay, for let's say followers or engagement. If it's, let's say, if for my personal account, if I have some followers and if I if I have some engagement, my purpose might be that when I post something interesting, are enough people seeing it? Are enough people receiving it? I mean, if I have an objective that, look, I want to share some achievements or something like that, and I want people to know and notice, and it makes an impact. Now, it will happen if I have certain follower base, and also because many of them are engaged to me. See, follower base by itself in today's day has very little meaning, because most platforms will not worry so much about the follower base as much as about how many of them are actively following you in terms of doing some engagement or not, or what, because it's only to the active follower base perhaps that they will the platform will allow your content to reach, okay, right, into their feed. So whether a big follower base is useful, small follower base, the thought is that, okay, if you have large follower base, a certain percentage will be active. If you have a smaller follower base, then again a certain percentage will be active. So finally you want active percentage. So if it's a percentage of a bigger number, hopefully you have larger number of active followers. Is a sort of a logic. I mean, it may or may not always be true. But from that point of view, there is a relevance. On the other hand, if you are an organization, if you're a brand and you're building this with an intent as a very integral part of your digital marketing piece, where you want, let's say, your Instagram handle to actually enable your sales of your, cosmetic products or your fashion product or something, then it's an integral piece. Then you want to find a way to increase that base. You want to find a way to keep them engaged, because it is a direct means for you to generate your business. So then you can't just leave it to chance. So there, the larger the base, the larger the active base, definitely helps. Right, right. True. So it would be safe to say that it really depends on the kind of business that a company is operating in, and
True.
that is where the metrics. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
but I mean, one thing is for sure. I mean, if you're just building a base, as much as
Hmm.
possible, it needs to be a relevant kind of a follower. Because
Right.
there are ways in which you can build a large number. And, it could be
Hmm.
completely irrelevant. Then that number has no meaning. I mean, if you're if you get followers from China or something, just because somebody wants to make it appear that you have a large follower base, just as a
Hmm.
perception issue, it doesn't do
Hmm.
any good because maybe you are selling products in India, you have some large base from outside India who don't ever going to buy from you. Then what's the point? So build out a
True.
good follow base if you can, but make sure that it's a relevant kind of a consumer who's who's following you.
Great. So that brings me to my next question. Are there any brands whose work you've personally liked in the digital space? Anything that your agency has worked on, or anything that you've seen that has left an impact and you liked it?
So amongst we have several brands for which we do. So first of all, I'll tell you about our some of our good clients because just
Uh-huh.
not in any order of preference or anything, but
Hmm.
we've been working on these for a while, and we do believe that we're fairly doing a reasonably good job with all modesty. So amongst the brands, one is let's say the mutual fund Sahi Hai, which is the AMFI campaign, which has been a huge success for
Hmm.
the industry. I mean, growing the sector. It's a campaign of the industry association. It's not about an individual brand. So it has increased the mutual fund user base, and we're very proud of that. We do some
Right.
really interesting work on all our social platforms, some great videos, some great contextual marketing. And similarly, in the same segment, we also work with a few other brands like Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund. We work with Axis Mutual Fund. We work with HDFC Mutual Fund. So in the mutual fund sector in particular, all of these, they're all our clients. Different teams work on them, but we need to give each one its own sort of unique identity on digital and social, and we've kind of largely been able to do that. On the other end, we also do interesting stuff for, let's say, a Ford. Like it's a global automobile brand, and constantly coming up with something unique in terms of the content, the post. Again, very largely, like recently, we had a very nice, simple creative around Raksha Bandhan. We do it. We've done some
Mm-hmm.
really good work around when COVID first came in and how you didn't have to go out in the road, and your Ford is a vehicle, and it tells you how you don't need to go like in a very creative way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a brand. We do some good work for olive oil brands, Figaro and Bertolli. Again, some interesting engagement work with influencers. Some good creatively presented uh, recipe videos and all that. So those are some of. I mean, there are many, and I would be doing injustice to the other clients, but they're just some samples I'm
Mm-hmm.
mentioning. But otherwise, I mean, in the outside, I definitely have a few other brands whose content typically I love. Netflix
Hmm.
is one, always something edgy there.
Yeah.
Zomato is typical amongst Indian, I think the Indian brands. Zomato has a very good presence. Um,
Yes.
so I like it. Nike always kills it with really good creative work. Even right now, as you probably know, there is a really interesting video of Nike which is going around, and very proud of. Very, very good work on Nike also in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
what emotions it generates out of the viewer. Similarly,
True.
Dow and those guys have also done really good work. We also do interesting work for Britannia, which is also our client,
Mm-hmm.
where again we've been very contextual. Being able to respond to something happening on at that point in a very very quick turnaround. So we've done a lot of that. So yeah, I mean there are many. I'm just giving a few examples here.
Right. It's good to hear about someone from the creative side itself share their preferences, because we as consumers, we just see something, we either like it or we don't. But hearing it from you makes us realize the kind of thought process that
goes into actually coming up with an idea. Um, and so,
Agency brands, while all agencies also try to do their bit for their own brand, there is one that I'm particularly a fan of, which is RGA, which is an agency based out of the US, digital or integrated agency. So there, I'm just amazed by the irreverence of their post. But with that, they've created a definite character about their social profile, and they're making a statement each time when they post something, and it's very
nice.
different. It's very, somebody could even potentially get offended a little bit about what they write, but with that, they're making a statement. So you've
Safe.
got to stand out that this is what we stand for, like that.
Right. I will definitely check that out. I think controversy does sort of catch more eyeballs, doesn't it?
But you can be controversial as a one-off, but
Yeah.
this is not controversial per se. It's just like they're irrelevant about some things that people typically do. That they don't want to do that. They want to sort of they sort of laugh at it in a way, in a
Okay.
certain sarcastic way, and they do it on an ongoing basis. So then that's what they are. It's not about like let's just create this one controversy and get some short-term value. It's not that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So this sort of brings me to my last question before we conclude today's session. We are living in times that none of us could have foreseen, right? People are spending more time on digital than earlier. You don't have the freedom to go out. So you are spending more time at home, more time with your family. So at least I personally think this is going to change the way people in general consume media, and this could even stand true probably
the post-COVID era. So, do you think that the shift could be even more skewed towards digital, and how would this particular incident actually shape our the digital lives and digital marketing per se? So, any parting thoughts on that? Yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, like you stated, this is an unprecedented situation, and it is a crisis of at many levels. We've had so crisis always generates some behavior change, but at least in most of our memories, we've never seen a crisis of this kind lasting this long, being so globally pervasive, across the country, across the world. So it's very, very unique, very different. Now, and the fact that it's lasted so long. So in the short term, you would think that it would force a lot of behavior change. Like all of us who are at home, have been at home. So yes, we will spend more time online because we are not going out. Maybe we'll order a lot online because again, we are not going to the stores or we are not going to restaurants to eat. So we'll order food out or something like that. So yes, there are definitely things which would change, especially in the short term because we are constrained. However, because it's lasted for this long, and we don't know how long more it's going to last, it's something which is not, it's not like behavioral change where we say, okay, now that we are out of it, let's go back to our old selves. Even from, for example, as simple as working from home. Now, it had been a 2 week, 3 week, 4 week kind of a scenario. As soon as that got over, everybody would return back to their offices and continue like it was before. But today, most companies, a lot of these companies, including ours, for example, are thinking about like whether this is the way to go, irrespective of when we are allowed to go back to office, whether things are better,
yeah.
or we'll have a hybrid model or something, simply because we realize that there are so many advantages of being like this. I mean, especially if you're living in a city like Mumbai, I mean, you may be spending hour, 2 hours commuting. Suddenly that's gone. You're in the comfort of your home. Everything is happening. You're managing life. There's very little compromise in work actually, which we are seeing. We found a way to make things work. we're connecting to our clients, we're doing our collaboration, all that is working. So whether we will ever really go back to the old ways. So in all respects, in short, I mean, coming back to the point that a lot of behavioral change will not remain temporary, but will become permanent. Some of it will change back. A lot of that changed behavior. I mean, besides there are some, you know, different level of changes in terms of, sort of more focus on hygiene, or all those things are at a different level. But from a pure digital perspective, um, digital has become definitely a far more integral part of everybody's life. Whether you're a senior citizen, whether you're a kid, from a kindergarten child taking online education to the senior citizen living at home and ordering food or ordering services, everybody is forced to use some or the other digital means. So digital has definitely become a far higher part of typical life, and which leads, from a brand perspective, that's the means to then reach your customer. That's the means to sell to them. That's the means to give them customer service. And hence, I mean, I think it's going to be, like we all say, that it's the biggest catalyst for digital transformation, much more than all of our marketing and all of our, thought leadership and everything that we were trying in the pre-COVID world. Whatever it could not do, the COVID and the pandemic has done for us, and now increasingly brands are going to embrace digital transformation at all levels, and that's how the digital marketing is going to grow, and all other formats. I mean, whether it's marketing automation, whether it's e-commerce, everything is going to see a huge growth, because now we know that that's the way to go.
So true, so true. I totally agree with you on that, and it's really great to hear your perspective
on this. So great, Sanjay. I would like to thank you for removing time for us. It's been a very insightful session. Thank you so much. And
You're most welcome.
And I hope you will join us. I'm sure we are not going to let you go so easily. So we will definitely have a few more sessions on different sort of marketing tactics, techniques, some advice from your end. So we're quite excited to speak with you again then.
Sure. My pleasure.
Great.
We'll
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Yes.